Have you ever felt lost? Have you ever made choices that took you far away from everything good in your life? Today, I want to share with you one of the most powerful stories ever told. A story that has touched hearts for thousands of years. A story about a young man who thought he knew what would make him happy, a father whose love never failed, and a journey that teaches us something beautiful about forgiveness. This is not just an old story from long ago. This is a story that speaks to every heart that has ever felt broken, every soul that has ever wondered if there is a way back home. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let me take you on a journey that might just change the way you see love forever. In a quiet place, far from the noise of big cities, there lived a father who loved his two sons more than life itself. This father had worked hard all his life. His hands were rough from years of honest work, but his heart was gentle and full of love. Everything he did was for his family. The father had two sons, and they were as different as night and day. The older son was steady and reliable. He loved working alongside his father. He found joy in simple things and was happy with the life they had built together. Every morning, he would wake up ready to work, grateful for the home they shared and the peace they enjoyed. But the younger son was different. There was something restless in his heart, something that made him look beyond their peaceful home toward distant places. While his family found happiness in their quiet life, the younger son dreamed of adventure, of seeing the world, of experiencing things he had never experienced before. The father watched both his sons with loving eyes. He knew the older son's heart was content at home. But he also saw the longing in his younger son's eyes, the way he would stare into the distance as if searching for something that was calling to him from far away. One evening, as the sun was setting and painting the sky in beautiful colors, something happened that would change everything. The younger son came to his father with a look of determination on his face. His heart was beating fast, and his hands were shaking slightly, but he had made up his mind about something important. "Father," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I need to ask you something." The father stopped what he was doing and looked at his son. Something in the young man's voice told him that this conversation was going to be difficult. "I want my share of everything that will be mine one day," the son continued, speaking faster now as if the words were burning his tongue. "I want it now. I am leaving to find my own way in the world." The father felt as if someone had struck him in the chest. These words were more than just a request for money. In those days, asking for your inheritance early was like saying you wished your father was dead. It was the deepest form of rejection a son could give to his father. But as the father looked into his son's eyes, he did not see hatred. He saw desperation. He saw a young man whose heart was crying out for something he believed he could only find far away from home. The father's heart broke, not because he was angry, but because he loved his son so much and knew that the world would not treat him with the same love and kindness. For a long moment, father and son stood in silence. The weight of the request hung heavy in the air between them. The father had worked his entire life to build something beautiful for his sons. Every day of hard work, every sacrifice he had made, was so that one day his boys would have a good life. "My son," the father said softly, his voice thick with emotion, "everything I have worked for was meant to be yours and your brother's one day. But if your heart is calling you to go somewhere else, then I will not stand in your way." With tears in his eyes but love in his heart, the father prepared to give his son what he asked for. He knew this might be the biggest mistake his son would ever make, but he also knew that love sometimes means letting go, even when it breaks your heart. With his inheritance in his hands, the younger son packed his few belongings and prepared to leave. He looked around the home where he had grown up, at the familiar sights and sounds that had been his whole world. For just a moment, a small voice in his heart whispered that maybe he should stay. But the call of adventure was louder, and he pushed those doubts away. As he walked away from his father's house, he did not look back. He was too excited about the future, too eager to see what the world had to offer him. Behind him, his father stood watching until his son disappeared over the hill. The father's heart was heavy with sorrow, but it was also filled with hope that one day his beloved son would come home. The younger son traveled to a far country, to a big city full of bright lights and exciting opportunities. Everything was new and thrilling. The city seemed to welcome him with open arms, offering him friendships, pleasures, and all the freedom he had ever dreamed of. At first, life in the big city was everything the young man had hoped it would be. He had money to spend, and there were so many ways to spend it. He made new friends quickly, friends who were happy to enjoy his generosity. There were parties every night, fine food to eat, and entertainment that never seemed to end. The young man felt like he was on top of the world. He had everything he thought he wanted: freedom, excitement, and people who seemed to enjoy his company. His father's quiet home seemed like a distant memory, and he rarely thought about the simple life he had left behind. Every day brought new adventures, and every night brought new pleasures. The young man spent his money freely, believing it would last forever. He felt important and popular. Everyone wanted to be around him, everyone wanted to be his friend. Life was good, or so it seemed. But there was something strange happening, something the young man did not notice at first. The more he spent, the more he needed to spend to feel happy. The more pleasure he sought, the emptier he felt inside. The more friends he had, the lonelier he became. Something was missing, but he could not put his finger on what it was. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, the young man's fortune began to shrink. The money that had once seemed endless was disappearing faster than he had ever imagined possible. But he was not worried. He was having too much fun to think about tomorrow. Then something terrible happened. A great famine struck the land, and suddenly everything became much more expensive. Food became scarce, work became hard to find, and money became even more precious than before. The young man's inheritance, which had already been running low, now disappeared completely. One morning, the young man woke up and realized he had nothing left. Not a single coin remained from all the wealth his father had given him. He looked around at the expensive things he had bought, but they were all gone too, sold or given away in his careless spending. Even worse than losing his money was losing his friends. All those people who had been so happy to spend time with him when he was rich suddenly had no time for him at all. They stopped inviting him to parties. They stopped answering when he called. They turned their backs on him when they saw him on the street. The young man found himself completely alone in a strange city, with no money, no friends, and no place to go. The world that had once seemed so welcoming now felt cold and harsh. The freedom he had longed for had become a prison of loneliness and despair. Desperate and hungry, the young man looked for any kind of work he could find. In that country, the only job he could get was feeding pigs for a local farmer. This was the lowest kind of work imaginable, especially for someone who had grown up in a good family. But he had no choice. Every day, he would go out to the pig pen and pour slop into the feeding troughs for the animals. He was so hungry that he began to look at the food he was giving to the pigs and wish he could eat it himself. The pigs were eating better than he was. As he sat there in the mud, surrounded by the smell and noise of the pigs, the young man had time to think about his life. For the first time since leaving home, he remembered his father's house. He remembered the warmth of his family's love, the security of always having enough to eat, the peace of belonging somewhere. He thought about the servants in his father's house and realized that even they had a better life than he did now. They had food to eat, a place to sleep, and the respect that came from being part of his father's household. Meanwhile, here he was, starving and alone, wishing he could eat pig food. Sitting there in his misery, a thought began to form in the young man's mind. It was a thought that both excited him and terrified him at the same time. What if he went home? What if his father would take him back? Of course, he knew he could never be a son again. He had thrown away that right when he took his inheritance and wasted it all. He had dishonored his father and brought shame on his family name. But maybe, just maybe, his father would let him work as a servant. Maybe his father would give him a job, and he could at least have food to eat and a place to sleep. The more he thought about it, the more the idea grew in his heart. He would go home. He would admit to his father that he had been wrong. He would ask for forgiveness and beg for a chance to work as a hired hand. It would be humbling, but it would be better than starving. The young man rehearsed what he would say to his father. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Please, just let me be one of your hired servants." With these words echoing in his heart, the young man made the most important decision of his life. He would go home. No matter how difficult it would be, no matter how ashamed he felt, he would return to his father's house. The walk home was long and difficult. The young man was weak from hunger and exhaustion. His clothes were torn and dirty. He had no money for food or shelter along the way. But with every step, his heart grew a little lighter. He was going home. As he walked, he continued to practice his speech. He wanted to make sure he said the right words to his father. He wanted to show that he truly understood how wrong he had been and how sorry he was for everything he had done. The closer he got to his father's land, the more nervous he became. What if his father refused to see him? What if his father was too angry to forgive him? What if his brother would not accept him back? These questions troubled him, but they did not stop him from continuing his journey. Finally, after many days of walking, the young man could see his father's house in the distance. His heart began to pound with fear and hope. This was it. This was the moment that would determine his future. But while the young man was still far off, someone else saw him coming. His father had been watching and waiting every day since his son left, hoping and praying for this moment. When the father saw a familiar figure walking slowly up the road, his heart leaped with joy. Without thinking about his dignity or what people might say, the father ran toward his son. He ran like a young man, though his hair was now gray and his body was not as strong as it once was. Love gave him strength and speed. When father and son finally met on that dusty road, everything else in the world seemed to disappear. The father threw his arms around his son and held him tight, tears streaming down both their faces. The young man tried to begin his prepared speech. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But his father stopped him with another embrace. "My son," the father whispered, "my precious son. You were lost and now you are found. You were dead to me, and now you are alive again." The father called to his servants. "Quickly, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Kill the fattened calf and prepare a feast. We must celebrate because my son who was lost has come home." That night, the father's house was filled with music and laughter and the wonderful smell of a great feast. Everyone was celebrating the return of the lost son. The young man sat at the table, wearing fine clothes again, surrounded by love and acceptance. He could hardly believe this was real. As he looked around at the celebration, the young man's heart was filled with gratitude. He had expected judgment and rejection. Instead, he had found forgiveness and love beyond anything he could have imagined. His father had not only taken him back as a son but had honored him with a celebration. All the wealth he had lost, all the pleasure he had sought in the far country, seemed like nothing compared to this moment. He was home. He was loved. He was forgiven. But not everyone was happy about the celebration. The older son had been working in the fields all day, as he did every day. When he came home that evening, he heard music and dancing coming from the house. He asked one of the servants what was happening. "Your brother has come home," the servant explained with a smile. "Your father is so happy that he has ordered a great feast to celebrate." When the older brother heard this, he became angry. He had stayed home all these years, working faithfully, never causing his father any trouble. Yet he had never been given a party like this. His younger brother had wasted everything and brought shame on the family, but now he was being treated like a hero. The older brother was so upset that he refused to go into the house and join the celebration. When the father heard about this, he came outside to talk to his older son. "My son," the father said gently, "why are you angry? This should be a day of joy for all of us." "I have worked for you all these years," the older brother replied, his voice full of hurt and frustration. "I have never disobeyed you or caused you trouble. But you have never given me even a small party to celebrate with my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes back after wasting everything you gave him, you kill the fattened calf and throw a great feast." The father's heart ached as he listened to his older son's pain. He understood the hurt and the sense of unfairness. But he also understood something deeper about love and forgiveness. "My dear son," the father said, putting his hand on the older brother's shoulder, "you are always with me and everything I have belongs to you. You have never been away from my love or my care. But your brother was lost to us, and now he is found. He was dead to us, and now he is alive again. How can we not celebrate such a wonderful thing? As the celebration continued and the family slowly began to heal, the deeper meaning of this story became clear. This was not just a story about a young man who made bad choices and came home. This was a story about the heart of perfect love. The father in this story represents the kind of love that never gives up, never stops hoping, and never stops watching for the one who has gone away. It is a love that runs to meet us when we finally decide to come home, no matter how far we have wandered or how badly we have failed. The younger son represents every person who has ever thought they could find happiness away from where they belong. Every person who has ever chosen their own way instead of the way of love. Every person who has ever discovered that the world's promises are empty and its pleasures are temporary. The older brother represents those who have stayed faithful but struggle with bitterness and resentment. He reminds us that sometimes the greatest challenge is not coming home from a far country, but learning to celebrate when others receive the same love and forgiveness we have always known. This beautiful story teaches us something amazing about love and forgiveness. It shows us that no matter how far we have wandered, no matter what we have done or how badly we have failed, there is always a way home. There is always someone watching and waiting for our return. The story reminds us that true love does not keep score of wrongs. It does not hold grudges or demand payment for past mistakes. True love celebrates restoration and rejoices in second chances. It also teaches us about the danger of taking love for granted. The older brother had everything but almost missed the joy of the moment because he was focused on what he thought was unfair. Sometimes those who have never strayed need to learn just as much about grace and forgiveness as those who have wandered far away. Perhaps you see yourself in this story. Maybe you are like the younger son, feeling lost and far from home, wondering if there is a way back to the love and acceptance you once knew. If so, this story has good news for you. It is never too late to come home. Love is waiting for you with open arms. Or maybe you are like the older brother, faithful and obedient but struggling with feelings of resentment or unfairness. If so, this story invites you to see beyond your own perspective and celebrate the amazing power of forgiveness and restoration. Or perhaps you are like the father, someone who loves others and longs to see them return to what is good and right. This story encourages you to keep watching, keep hoping, and keep loving even when it seems hopeless. As beautiful as this story is on its own, it points to an even greater truth. It is a picture of how the Creator of the universe loves each one of us. No matter how far we have wandered from what is good and right, no matter what mistakes we have made or how badly we have failed, perfect love is always watching and waiting for us to come home. This love does not wait for us to clean ourselves up or prove that we deserve forgiveness. This love runs to meet us while we are still far off, throws its arms around us, and celebrates our return. This love gives us not just acceptance but honor, not just forgiveness but restoration. The story reminds us that we are all beloved children who sometimes lose our way. But no matter how lost we become, we are never too far from home. Love is always watching the horizon, always ready to celebrate our return, always ready to throw a party because what was lost has been found. And so, dear friends, we come to the end of this beautiful journey. The story of the father and his two sons continues to touch hearts and change lives after thousands of years because it speaks to something deep inside every human soul. It speaks to our need for love, our longing for home, and our hope for forgiveness. Whether you are just beginning your own journey or you have been walking for a long time, remember that there is always a way home. Remember that love is stronger than failure, forgiveness is greater than shame, and hope is more powerful than despair. If this story has touched your heart today, I would love to hear about it. Please leave a comment below and share how this message has spoken to you. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear more stories that inspire and encourage, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us continue creating content that we hope brings light and hope into your day. Until next time, remember that no matter where you are in your journey, you are loved beyond measure, and there is always a way home.